Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel. And in our top stories today, I noticed this to be a very high-level top Google trend today. So I wanted to cover it here on the channel and just give a little bit of a discussion and background on it. So Jeffrey Landry vows to sign bill putting 10 commandments in schools. I can't wait to be sued. And of course, we constantly hear the debate and discussion over the 10 commandments and or other religious symbols or items in public schools, and I'll go into a little bit of explanation into that in just a moment. But Governor Jeffrey Landry said he plans to sign into law a controversial bill requiring public schools and colleges in Louisiana to post the 10 commandments in their classrooms, and that he welcomes challenges to the law in court. And it's interesting because depending on who your governor is, depending on who your representatives are in a particular state, and of course the will of the people, because that's what we are in this country. We are a constitutional republic. We the people. However, with Democrats, they've turned it more into a multicultural authoritarianism democracy of we the government. So a lot of language being used here, and it's important that within the semantics that you dissect and analyze and realize what's actually being said and what's being interpreted by particular groups. During his keynote speech on Saturday at a Republican fundraiser in Tennessee, Landry touted the bill as conservative victory in the ongoing culture wars. Now, of course, we know about the culture wars. We're seeing that happen right now. There was a big deal about Target just recently from Glenn Beck. And, of course, many of the employees there at Target were upset that a lot of the content that was there last year for Pride targeted towards children have now been removed because regular, everyday individuals didn't like it. And of course, Target lost a lot of money, just like Bud Light lost a lot of money. So as a business, you have to make the decisions. But here's the difficulty. Here's the challenge, as I've said before. When it came to Donald Trump winning in 2016, regular everyday society gave the left an inch, gave them a little bit of breathing room because they couldn't reconcile psychologically or emotionally that Donald Trump had won the election. They were upset. They were livid. And we saw the rioting and stuff that happened after that. But they were given an inch, and now they have essentially hijacked our culture, hijacked our language, and now with Joe Biden in office, they have hijacked our institutions and our culture on top of it, and we're seeing how they're using that. So Jeffrey Landry vows to be putting the 10 Commandments in schools there in Louisiana. So this should be interesting. And so let's just talk a little bit more about it, because the separation of church and state is a very common phrase that you hear people use, or more specifically, misuse. And I've highlighted it down here so you guys can see it. Though they didn't use the phrase separation of church and state, the framers of the Constitution debated the extent to which the government should support religion. Some argue that it was fine to mandate participation in religious services if a person could choose which ones they wanted to attend, for example, or that would attend. More commonly, many of the founders, including Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, argued that government compulsion of religion violated a person's natural right to shape their own life according to the convictions. Now, I want you to pay very close attention, right? Because government, right? It's government that shouldn't impose it. And it was Thomas Jefferson that created the phrase, right? Jefferson immortalized the phrase in a letter to the Dansbury Baptist Association. That's where the phrase came from. But it's often very misused, and people believe that it is somehow or within the Constitution, and it is not. So when you hear separation of church and state, it was a phrase used by Thomas Jefferson. It doesn't have any validity, as it were, in the Constitution. However, since it is government, the argument that is often made by schools or by atheists or non-believers and skeptics and so forth and so on is that the separation of church and state should be recognized within the school, since public school is a form of government and government should not include religion within the context of the school or of the school. Yet we see the observances of other religions in certain school activities. But it always has been an attack on the Christian faith, mostly, that has to endure a lot of this. But the separation of church and state was a phrase used by Thomas Jefferson, and it does not mean that there should be separation of an individual's right to worship. So in other words, if they want to say a public school can't recognize a particular religion. That's the school and the school officials as government officials or government employees or city employees, state employees, you know what I mean? So they cannot impose or establish a form of ideology, philosophy, or worldview or religion to the students. Now, if a student wants to pray in class, pray at school, they have the individual right to do that. So it's very specific here that I wanted to get involved. And of course, as you remember, former congressional candidate charged with vandalizing satanic temple display at Iowa Capitol. A former congressional candidate from Mississippi charged with vandalizing the satanic temple of Iowa's display depicting the pagan idol Baphomet, which is the French pronunciation, or people here in the U.S. pronounce it Baphomet, at the Iowa State Capitol, says he saw this blasphemous statue and was outraged. My conscience is held captive to the word of God, not to bureaucratic decree, Michael Cassidy of Lauderdale, Mississippi, told conservative website The Sentinel. And I acted. So Cassidy, 35, was charged with fourth-degree criminal mischief on Thursday, according to the Iowa Department of Public Safety. This was quite some time ago, actually. This was back in December of 2023 when that happened. So he was displaying his outrage over this particular obviously Baphomet or Baphomet, as they say here in the States. And it's an interesting argument, is it not? Because again, I want to emphasize here, Congress shall make no laws respecting an establishment of religion. Congress, government, okay? Government can't. Individual people can make the decisions themselves. So the reason we have the Constitution and the reason the Constitution is currently under attack is because we see that even from Joe Biden. Remember when he made the statement about if you want to deal with the government, then you have to learn to fly an F-15, because the Democrats who keep saying democracy is saying we the multicultural authoritarianist, we the multicultural people who engage in authoritarianism, it's we the government. And so when they keep shouting about democracy, protecting democracy, no, we need to restore our republic. We need to restore our Constitution. We need to restore our country to it being a constitutional republic and not a multicultural democracy. So all of this language, and this is why I wanted to bring this up, regarding the fact that it started off here with the Ten Commandments, is language. You got to be very focused on the language and the framing and the understanding and the interpretation of what's going on here. And we saw a very novel decision by Judge Merchan in his courtroom where he allowed individual jurors to decide a verdict. And it's just not the way our law is practiced. But these individuals get away with it because it's so rarely challenged. And the reason that we're not seeing it being so challenged by state governors or attorney generals or others is because Donald Trump will be able to appeal both the fraud case and what's described as the hush money case. So it's basically them just clamoring as a show trial to get the attention they want, which is to put Donald Trump's name in the headline. And so this too, being right there at the top of the Google trending, is obviously going to be there because it is a point of contention that can be used against the GOP or others. But Democrats are Christians also, so don't get that confused. And people on the left are also Christian. So this is just a hot button topic that came up today. I wanted to bring it up to you and give you guys a little bit of clarity. I didn't go into like major detail, but you understand that separation of church and state was a phrase used by Thomas Jefferson, and it's still government that cannot impose religion or cannot impose their will on the American people, because that's why we have the Constitution. And then, of course, the story about Michael Cassidy, and then of course Congress again shall make no law respected. So it's government that can't make that decision. But nonetheless, guys, that's what I had for you today. I want to thank all of you guys across New Tech as well as here on YouTube for your guys' continued support. And appearing there on the screen, that will be the channel icon. You guys can click on that to subscribe, as well as to select notifications. That way you know when there's content here on the channel. And I'll see all you guys in the next video.